Hello students, I'm going to show you in this video how to really quickly do some brush techniques, and this will hopefully be a preview to a longer, more detailed video, but I just want to show you some quick ideas. And I've got in my Photoshop file some very conveniently masked layers with nothing in them, but I've got my masks. How did I create these masks? Well, because I had some very easily maskable layers already that exist. So for example, there's some lines that I can create masks from. How did I get that? Well, I created it from AutoCAD. And you can Google this to see how I created that file and exported that. Now, you have to have this part kind of set up to continue from here. If not, you might be able to still do some stuff, but let me just show you why the masking is helpful. I've got my ground layer highlighted, and if you're in a really big hurry, you can just select a green and then do an Alt-Delete. That will fill it with your foreground color. I'll go to my water, and I'll pick a blue. You know what? I'm going to be kind of fancy here, so I like to have only web colors turned on, not because I'm concerned about displaying this on the web. It just makes somewhat easily rememberable colors in case I want to come back and find that same blue. I can remember it, so that's kind of why I like to do that. Anyway, let's pick a darker blue there. Why did I do that? Okay, I've got my water layer highlighted and turned on, and gradient. All right, my water is done. Path, same thing. I could just come in here. What color is a path? Usually kind of, I don't know, brownish. How about that? No, it's going to match my grass too much. Let's do gray. There we go. Alt-Delete. Specific materials. Okay, now these, I've got my sand area and kind of my boardwalk on something else, so I couldn't really do... I'll do an Alt-Delete anyway. You know what? If you're in a hurry, maybe that's the same color. And then structure. Let's see here. Let's make our structure... How about brown? Alt-Delete. Okay, so that's like the vegetation. Oh, I didn't add vegetation. Hey, that's all right. So let's go to my vegetation layer. I'll turn that off for a moment so you can see how I did this. Vegetation, I will take my magic wand tool, click here. Then I'm going to do an invert. And you know what? I'll just show you where it's at up here because it's select inverse. There's the shortcut if you want to do it. So that selects everything I want. I'll create a new layer, put it down here, and then click on my create mask button. All right, so there's my vegetation. And of course, we'll give this a good name. Turn that off for a moment, come down here, got the vegetation. Oh, you know what? I think I want those lines on. There we go. And, oh, trees in plan are usually a little bit darker green. So let's do that. All right, so there you go. The really quick, not the prettiest rendering, but if you really need to get something out the door, you can do it that way. Let me back up now and show you how we can make this even a little bit nicer. I'll go back to my ground layer and we'll use the paint brushes. I could just grab the paintbrush and start painting. And with the paintbrush selected, you can right click and access a whole bunch of other brushes here. And I think you can even access more if you hit this little fly out. So sorted brushes, etc. But I'm going to back up, hit escape. I'm going to load up two windows that I'd recommend you do as well. My brush, which is this guy, and the brush presets. Sometimes these are hanging out on the same tab like that. If you just drag these side by side, they can be together. And all we really need is the brush preset, I guess, or this one right here. This is the brush preset. This is the brush settings. So I can select a brush over here. I can kind of see what it's going to do. So there's some, maybe you'll find one here that you just like. Oh, look at that down there. That's kind of neat. Oh, let's undo that. But let's make a brush. Let's make one that works a little bit better. Unlimited ways to do this. Now, I kind of like to use these kind of organic-y shapes, right? Like that one. And then I'll just kind of really quickly run through this. So the shape size, you can crank that up. Move your cursor into your canvas here, and you can see the size. See there? That's going to be the size of it. If I make it bigger, I can see that it is now bigger. You can change that with your brackets as you're drawing. Shape dynamics, size jitter. Keep an eye down here. It shows you a preview. That just changes the actual size between 0 and 100%. You know what? Let's do, I don't know, 50. Control, if you have like a Wacom tablet, you can kind of play with that, but I don't have a pen, so I can't do that. Minimum diameter, Let's keep that to 0. Angle jitter. This one is important because look what it's doing. Keep an eye on this preview here. It is rotating it. So I want 100% because I really want these to have a lot of variation. Roundness jitter. Think of these as a 3D object, and we're rotating the 3D object. That's what roundness jitter does. I'll keep that all the way down. Scattering. I'm going on to the next tab here. How do I want to scatter these? Oh, it depends what you're painting. For the ground texture, I'm just kind of doing this really quick, trial and error. Let's do that. Count, again, just trial and error. Tend to keep these a little bit lower because that way it gives you have to do a few more passes, but you've got a little bit more control. Count jitter, that's kind of also related. If you have a pen, you can do some fun stuff, but I'll just leave it at that. Others I will leave off, except for color dynamics. That's a good one. Okay, I want to use 50% of my foreground and 50% of my background. So let's take a look over here. I'm going to choose this, and the ground color, the ground plane is usually a little bit lighter green. Let's swap that, and I'm just going to do 2. How about there we go, kind of an olivey green and a more, it looks like they clash, but this is kind of cool here. Now the jitter, trial and error, that's what I'd recommend. So I'm just going to do 5 down the row, 5%, and leave the purity at 0. And what is this going to look like? You can actually kind of test it out on your canvas as you are creating these. And I'm painting on green. So you know what? That actually could work. I didn't really think of that. I'm just kind of adding some highlights here, clicking and dragging. And as I let go, I can paint on top of it. Notice my mode is set to multiply. I don't know if that is the default or not, but you can play with that. So that might actually work. I was just going to paint over white to kind of show you what it looks like. But detail-wise, things are usually darker where there's more detail, where you kind of want to draw the eye. Things are usually darker where there is a slope. So if this kind of slopes down to the water, maybe I'll make that smaller. And notice it's only painting. I am actually painting kind of all over the place, but it's only displaying where I want it to because of that masking. So look over here. You can see the part that I'm painting. So that works out pretty well. Let me make a new, you know what? I'm going to do this really quick. Let's get those out of the way. Let's turn this off. And I'm going to paint in my background just so you can see that painting on white will kind of allow you to better see what these settings are going to generate. So I just did that. If I crank up the hue, saturation, and brightness, it does that. Maybe that's more of a fall color. Maybe if it's in the springtime or summer and colors are more consistent, I'll just do a 2, so that's not so bad. That's kind of a nice little grassy color. Back in the background, I don't want that, so let me do a delete. Oh, so here's let's see, let's select all. You know what, I'll just do undo a few times. Or alt undo, because that lets me go back. All right, let's go back to here, turn that on. Grass is, let me crank this up and just kind of fill in this part here. Now, you're potentially going to run into some issues because if this gets too loud, your trees get really hard to see. So just keep that in mind. You can always come back to just this layer and take the opacity to say, I don't know, 50? Not 1050. 50. There we go. So all right, problem sort of solved. All right, that'll work all right. Water, gradients work well for water. If it's just a nice, I wouldn't recommend doing the paintbrush in water because water just generally doesn't have that kind of variation. But what you could do, there are some filters you could play around with and stylize. Let's see here. There's like fibers. Let's see what fibers does. And I'm on my water layer. Let's find my water. Oh, it's picking up my colors too. We don't want that. So let's do this. Let's change the colors to blues. I'll just sample a couple colors over here. You don't have to do this again. I think the water looks okay as is. Filter, stylize. I'm sorry, where was that? It was under fibers. So render fibers. Just as an example. So that looks like that. We'll crank it up, take that down. Let's see how that looks. All right, well, that's kind of interesting. I don't know if I would do that, but let's go ahead and jump to the path. The path you can kind of get by with the same brush technique as the grass, but I tend not to be as sophisticated. Think of this like a marker. If you've ever used a xylene marker, you can kind of simulate that. So I'm going to create, oh, you know what, back here, I should have did this. If you really like your brush settings, hit this flyout button and do new brush preset, which really means save. And you can call this, whatever you want. That will make it available on your brush presets. See, it puts it at the very bottom here. There's that brush I just created, and I think you can look at it by name too. So there's the name. All right. Oh, and this was supposed to be a short video. Oh well. I'll try to speed it up here, or you can probably just fast forward in Photoshop as well. Or I'm sorry, YouTube. Getting my applications mixed up in my head. Where was I at? Okay, we're going to render some paths, and I'll go back to this window here. And now if I'm thinking about this like a marker, you know what? I'll just do, oh, how about this one? And I'm going to flatten it out here. It's keeping all of my same settings. Shape dynamics, I don't want this one to rotate or angle. I just want this one to be flat. Scattering. These ones, I don't know if I want any of these turned on, honestly. Smoothing. All right, why is that? Because all I'm really concerned about is the size and my application method. So pathway, I'm just going to choose like a grayish color here. And you know what? Let's angle that. There we go. That'd be like a marker tip, right? A xylene marker. Oops, and it's doing the scattering. Why is that? I don't want that. Scattering, shape dynamics. All right, so look what happens now. As I'm painting, it's just kind of like I'm scribbling with a marker. And the reason that's kind of nice is because you can kind of pick up, undulations of the way light plays off of asphalt or whatever this is pathway. And if I play with my multiply and put that down to 50, that's all right. It's maybe a little bit noisy, but just wanted to show you another technique. It takes up a little bit less rendering time as well on your machine because those really fancy brushes can get kind of carried away and be taxing on your computer. Yeah, you know what? I like that one as lighter. Trees. Let's do our trees. Oh, structures. How about? Yeah, let's take a look at the structures here. I've got my structures layer. Now I'm going to do some selection inside of here. And you know what? I'm going to clear out my layer here. Right now I just filled it with brown. I'll set this, my foreground color to be white. Do an Alt-Delete. That fills that up. Now, if I do a gradient, it just applies it to the whole layer. But if I just draw a selection window up here, notice I'm only highlighting an area that's already masked. Then I'll go in here and choose, oh, maybe that gazebo is like a shade of brown up top and a lighter shade of brown on the bottom. Let's zoom in on that. And gradient, there we go. Actually, it'd probably be more like that. Whoops. You know what? Why is my gradient? I'm going to undo, just go the other direction. There we go. That's kind of, it would pick up some of maybe the colors or the way the light would play off of that type of shape. Now this thing, maybe this is just a giant lean-to that just goes up in one direction. If that's the case, I'd probably treat it like I would my water. So I'll just kind of draw that selection box just to isolate it so I'm not adjusting my gazebo up there. And gradient, let's see, let's just go that way. I don't know if I like that. Now I know there is a way to do a texture fill. Let's see, fill, kind of freestyling it here because content aware pattern. Yeah, you could do a pattern fill, and maybe there's a pattern in here called rooftop or something. I'm sure you could find one. You could probably create one. Oops, let's see. Well, that one kind of looks like I don't know. Let's see what that looks like. Nah, who knows? Well, I'm sure there's something better in there that you could find, but for the time being, let's just do this. Let's just to gradient, and I'll do a little bit longer. So, all right. So there's that structure. Not the best, but I want to kind of move on a little quicker here. These guys, same thing. The sand, I'll go ahead and... This one, I would probably use the same brush techniques with a different shape. So got my shape or my layer highlighted, got my brush tool active, and these look kind of sandy here. So let's turn on some scattering. And I've still got some kind of sand type colors. You can't save the colors with the brush. That kind of stinks, but oops, that's way too heavy. Let's crank that up. There we go. So just adding a little bit of variation to that area. It's way too yellowy, but click, 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 click. Sometimes that works. And you know what? For the sake of time, I'm going to call my boardwalk thing just poorly colored. You know what? No, I can't do that. I got to make it better. So I'm drawing a selection window around that. I'll use my paintbrush again, and this time I'll go back and do... Here's where I want to save your brushes, because if I would have saved it, I wouldn't have to do this again. Make it larger, and let's go way larger. Let's go larger, larger, larger. There's my brush shape, and we'll put this down to 20% opacity. And see, I'm just going to drag. I'm letting go each time here because, again, kind of playing off of the way light plays off of shapes and colors and whatnot and materials. All right, it's better. It's not the best thing. Vegetation, let's see if we can't do our vegetation a little bit better. Now this, I would really think of this like staying inside the lines, right? So this allows you to stay inside of the lines no matter what you paint. I don't like that green. Maybe it works, but so I'm going to highlight that. Put white as my foreground or my background, either one. But foreground, I can do an Alt-Delete. That clears off conveniently my vegetation. Oh, what should we do? Let's make a brush. Let's go here. Let's see. What would be a good... You know what? Why not? Let's... Leaves? Why not? Scrolling. You know what? Let's do it this way. Let's go over here. Brush shape. This is easier to scroll through. Oh, how about... Oh, let's just do that kind of wedge shape here. Shape dynamics. I'm going to give it some size jitter. Angle jitter, definitely. Scattering. Yeah, we want to do that. So it kind of looks like a leaf. That's all right. Dual brush. Color dynamics will turn on. Keep those the same. I'll do 8. Let's see what 8 looks like. 8, 8, 8, all the way down. And you don't forget, you have to always choose your colors. I wish they would save the colors in the trees, but they don't. And let's swap that. And in plan, conventionally, trees are a little bit darker. I'll make this larger over here. Oops, and I've still got my opacity set way down. So, and it's way too big. So I'm just kind of on the fly here, changing my shape. So let's zoom in and see how that works. Oops, don't zoom in that far. Brush. So now it's really more like just rendering. You just got a nice fancy marker and you're stippling here. And maybe I'll do these trees first, and I'll come back and I could hammer out all of the... Whoops, that's a evergreen tree. Let's undo that. Trees, a little bit darker. There's all kinds of conventions on how to shade them. Is this the way the shadowing would actually go? Depends on where north is. Now, maybe I want to change... This is where I really wish you could save the colors. Maybe there's a way to do it. I just don't know. I want to put a yellow, and then I can kind of stipple a little bit of yellow up here. So there you go. You could do that for all of your trees. Maybe it's not quite reading as well as you would like. So here's a trick. I'll make a copy of that layer, and then I'll turn this whole thing to a shade of green, like I did before. So Alt-Delete, it fills it. And then I'll set this one to, multiply maybe? There you go. And then I'll change the opacity. It's a lot of trial and error. There's not really one absolute right or wrong way to do any of this. You just got to play around and, oops, look at that. I got like an area in here that I shouldn't have colored. That's a masking issue. So I could highlight my mask and then do this. I'll just take my selection tool and kind of quickly click out an area and do, whoops, too far. Okay. If you double click too much, it unselects. So I've got my area selected. I have my mask selected. I'll do a fill, which I'm really just filling my mask with white, which punches it out. Fix that problem there. Okay, last absolute thing here, when you're really all ready to kind of package this up, play around with the styles down here, the FX, as in EFFECTS. Oh, how do you spell FX? I don't know, whatever. FX, and let's do, how about drop shadow and turn on preview. And sometimes you got to crank this up to see the effect. Ooh, look at that. That made this model. It was kind of looking, or this rendering, it's kind of looking so-so. Turn on some rendering or some drop shadows. Ooh, that already makes me want to buy this little park area. And you could do the same thing with your structure as well. Let's do that because it turned out pretty good. It's only applying the effects to the actual masked area, so that's kind of nice. Drop shadow. Maybe the structures are taller or shorter. They'd probably actually be shorter, so they wouldn't cast as long of a shadow. And you can play with the opacity here. Keep an eye on my model or my canvas. I'm kind of stuck in modeling mode. So there you go. Really quick overview of different ways you can render in Photoshop. Be watching for a more detailed, believe it or not, more detailed and longer video than this. Good luck.